You will begin with suburban presentation on the solution, how to obtain a supplemental source of water and how to fund the plant as well. I don't believe either suburban or the ever planning to have also perception of suburban filtration authority. Over an email. Also, come here's a case suburban or they have determined that it isn't water source. Second, suburban meeting, which set up another day discussion. Doesn't seem like a water emergency. I should say that not sure if you're the CCTWFA team operator is the person who brought the light out September 28th. Section consumption low reservoir level suggested that we were close to stage 3 of the opinion, which entailed mandatory restrictions stuff about. And maybe do some discussion to you about what point you actually engaged the person. The recent meeting was requested for face-to-face discussion of the proposed plan, learn details, but very little information that may be available by the city. Item function connecting. Some information was gleaned by the CCTWFA team operator calling Windhausen and Director. Since the CCTWFA is a permitted operator of the treatment plant, that's the interest in how it's operated, that will be effective. Few specific concerns are who will be the licensed operator of the treatment. Will the wells operate continually or as needed? Who will monitor the well pumps, coordinator, facility generators, and the like? What sampling will be necessary? There are a number more questions to be addressed to the engineers, but they're not included here. The other reason for requesting a meeting with the post-urban and CCTW went through a similar situation. 2007, emergency source was necessitated. The mile of HDPE pipe and 2 pumps were installed. I felt that their experience was beneficial. First thing that was done was all parties to get one situation work together. As a result, the city CCTW city work along with the contract. Meeting should have happened weeks ago. Going forward, we hope communication.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Unfinished business. 4A, discussion of options for the emergency water supply. Staff has provided our plan was to move forward based on staff. Do you want to go down through any of that?
I'll just say what I said to Lenny, who's the chief operator of the filtration plant last Friday. When there is a problem like exists right now with water supply depleting, then it does seem to be a habit of the city of Lock Haven to find a solution and then run full force forward with that solution. That is not to say, and the city acknowledges that it may not be the only solution. And so that is part of the reason of saying that both Suburban and the Filtration Authority are very welcome to put forward any other option that they may see. And council is willing to consider that. It isn't the city's way or no way. And that's not why we're here, is to try to shove some solution down someone's throat. But the city's engineers are here to address any questions that anyone may have, or take any suggestions that anyone have the opportunity to bring forward from either Suburban or the Filtration Authority or council. So with that, I don't know if anyone has any other plans, but if you don't, the engineers could go over kind of the details of what they've put together in order to tap into the supplemental water wells on McKinney Road.
Could I just ask a couple questions?
Go ahead.
How much water are you anticipating the wells are gonna provide?
1.4 million gallons a day.
Some of that might be covered by their presentation, some of the questions they might have.
That's true. But why don't you wait and see if you saw the questions after they make the presentation, because they may answer that. Is that okay? Okay, go ahead and give your presentation.
Okay, my name is Mark Glenn. I'm president of Wind Dobson and Foreman. We were requested to provide a game plan to address supply deficiencies at the reservoirs. What precipitated the need for emergency supply was in relation to the reservoir pool that needed to be lowered in order for the contractor to work on the project. That's a project involving a new spillway and some additional ordinances. Under the contract, the city was required to lower the pool 5 feet below its normal level, which was spillway overflow. And that was performed on February 6th of this year. And by virtue of that lowering, the capacity of the dam was reduced about a third. So the remaining water was approximately 67%. That reservoir is actually one of the largest public water supply reservoirs in terms of storage in the northern tier. However, it has one of the lowest watershed areas when compared to other reservoirs of equal or additional size. So the recovery on the reservoir is not good, but we did not anticipate that the pool would continue to drain. And the reason why it continued to drain was because there is a pass-by flow requirement that's set by DEP that requires the city to drain so much water through the existing pool so it can be released downstream. So as time went on, there was a rainfall deficit in that area. And as we approached the fall, there were some concerns raised about would we be able to make it through the end of the year. And as we continue to see the pool lower and the storage capacity dwindle, some discussions held about at what point do we proceed to an emergency situation. And we were governed by the drought contingency plan. There are various stages involved. Currently, we are at stage 3, which was issued, I believe, in August, late August, early September. But in any event, that led us to start examining options to provide a supplemental source to the city. It's true, work with Lenny, his concerns were raised about how the pool was dwindling and what supply we had available. On or about that point, we were consulting with the city and had recommended that since the wells that were drilled and tested last summer, which whose original intent was to be a supplemental source to the entire supply system, were drilled and tested, and the results of the water quality were excellent. That we were able to pump approximately 500 gallons a minute from both wells, which were known as the Maxwell number 2 and Quaker Hills well number 5. So at that point, it was felt that this was water that did not require treatment. We did get a preliminary assessment from DEP that was the case. So it appeared that we might have a solution here that did not involve the full-scale treatment of the water that did occur when the river source was used in 2007. And on or about that time, we filed a request for reduction of in-stream flow requirement to the DEP. And that was done on October 4th. In order to provide a approval from the state to lower the in-stream flow contribution from the dam. And that ultimate storage is, or that ultimate flow is measured at Zindel intake below Keller Reservoir. So as of the time we submitted the permit, I was over 2 weeks ago for an application. We had approximately 72 days. There was some rainfall that was gained in the watershed, and currently we stand at 74 days of remaining storage. And that would take, if we got no more rainfall or no more inflow into Old Reservoir, would take us to the first week of January. Now, that being said, we do not recommend waiting that long in order to proceed with the work that's required to hook up the wells to the system. And when that, I'll let Jim explain some of the details on that. But at that point, you know, if nothing was done, we would need to start rationing water. And that would be a hard ration in the plan that involves just not, requirement for sprinkling or car washing or something like that. This would be a set limit that would be allocated to each homeowner. And that is something obviously that no one wants to get to because, as I said, that's an extreme measure. So I'm going to let Jim Bally here talk about some of the details here after we were authorized last week in order to proceed with implementing a solution in terms of a supplemental connection to the system.
Okay, so for the past 2 years, we've been looking for and developing test wells, and the 2 wells that Mark mentioned, there's one on Steve Matt's property and one on Quaker Hill Farm, which is down on the lower end of McKinney Road along the river. We did the aquifer test plan, pump test for that 72-hour test a few months ago, and the data started to come back, and those wells look very, very good quality to the point where we may not have to filter them. Originally, the plan was to take them up to Lenny's plant and have them filtered. But Jim Casper, the hydrogeologist, feels that those wells meet the definition of true groundwater, meaning we'd only have to chlorinate the water and put it into the system. So when last week, when we were asked to look into this, the easiest way to put that water in your system is to chlorinate it, pump it out of the ground, chlorinate it, and tie into the existing lines that come to the city. Right now, for all intents and purposes, Lenny's putting out 3 million gallons of water a day. These wells are capable of about 1.5 million a day. So if the sooner we turn those wells on, you're going to cut your demand on Keller Reservoir in half. And instead of having 30 days left or 60 days left, you're going to have double that. And the longer we can go, the better with the chances of snow melt, rainfall, etc. So what I did last week is we came out on site on Tuesday and we met with some property owners. The one most important one is Steve Matz, who owns a large portion of property down along McKinney Road. Steve actually was one of the contractors that did a lot of the site preparation for the drilling of these wells, and he's given us permission to drill the wells on his property. So we met with him initially last Tuesday, and we walked the shortest route that we could get this well water into the 16-inch line that comes down from Lenny's plant under 220 and heading towards the city. It's about 8,000 feet away. We would bring a 12-inch line from the Quaker Hill well to the Matz well, and then we join those two wells together and run a 16-inch line all the way up to the rails to trails off Youngdale Road, just below 220. A lot goes into this, as Rich and the people that did this back in 2007 will attest. A lot has to happen in a short amount of time. These wells, we would have to put pumps in those wells. So we did some quick hydraulic calculations and determined they would be 100 horsepower pumps, so they're fairly sizable. And the reason why they're so sizable is they have to overcome the pressure of the treatment plant. So these wells would run 24/7. They'd pump at 500 gallons a minute each. And during the day, when people are using that water, it will go right into the system. At night, when people are sleeping and they're not using a lot of water, they'll go back up and fill the tanks at the treatment plant. So we'd be able to utilize all 1.5 million gallons a day. These wells would run continuously. So the pumps are approximately 100 horsepower pumps. We would have to power them, at least initially, with some temporary generators that would have to be fueled on a daily basis. The wells would be placed about 80 feet deep. The pumps would be placed about 80 feet deep in the wells. We'd use 6-inch drop pipe to the surface, pitless adapters, and then we transition to the HDPE pipe, which we would fuse together. They're 50-foot lengths. We'd fuse that together and lay it across the ground. Now, leaving the Quaker Hill site, we'd have to cross McKinney Road, so we need Wayne Township approval to bore under the road. Then we'd be on the riverside of McKinney Road till we got to the Matt's well. And then we would join together those two wells and then start the path of the 16-inch line. The routing for that is to go through Steve Matt's property below his house. Those of that know where he lives there along the river. We'd cut up to the railroad, we'd go under a culvert, through a culvert, under the railroad, about 70 feet across, Norfolk Southern, and then we'd continue across Steve's property, all the way up to Youngdale Road, where we'd have to cross one other property, Steve Hewling, who's given us permission to do this as well. And then we would have to bore under Youngdale Road, which we require an emergency HOP from PennDOT. When we exit the other side of Youngdale Road, we'd be on an existing right-of-way on BBK property that the city currently has for an 8-inch line that comes down off the 16-inch line. Then we'd run several 100 feet up that right-of-way and then tie into the existing 16-inch line. We'd probably tap into the 8-inch line for a short piece rather than tapping a 16-inch line to make it quicker, easier, and cheaper. But that would be the proposed routing. Now, the water has to be chlorinated, so down at the Matt's well, we would put a small building like an honest built shed, insulated. We'd put 2 chemical feed systems in there. We'd have a day tank for chlorine and a day tank for corrosion inhibitor. Those are the 2 chemicals that we need to feed to the water to match the water that's coming out of the treatment plant. We would have 2 chemical feed pumps there, and we'd have a chlorine analyzer to make sure we're putting the right amount of chlorine in the water before it enters the 16-inch line. Then we would receive chlorine contact from there up to Youngdale Road, and up there we'd have another shed with a chlorine analyzer in it, and that's your point of entry chlorine, where we would measure to make sure that the chlorine matches what's leaving the plant so that we have a consistent chlorine residual going out into the system. We have a few pieces of the puzzle that aren't ironed out yet. We've received quotes for pipe, for pumps, for pitless adapters, running generators. There's the railroad crossing is giving me fits. They subcontract the rail pros, and we're waiting for them to get back to us so that we can receive. We want to request an emergency permit to cross under the railroad. But everybody else has been very cooperative. We actually have been talking to PP&L to extend 3-phase power to the 2 well sites that we won't have to run the generators because it'll be half the cost. The electric to bioelectric will be half the cost of running the generators and fueling them with diesel. And the one thing I wanted to point out, we did come up with a rough cost estimate. We have about $350,000 in pipe and about close to $200,000 in pumps and pitless adapters and so forth. All that could be reused once these wells are going to be permanently installed. Obviously, the cost of putting this pipe out there on the ground and doing the borings and so forth, a lot of that's not going to be used. But our original estimate of $1 million was a rough number, and it looks like it's going to be pretty close in terms of what it's going to take to get all this infrastructure in place. But again, probably 50 to 60% of that is going to be reused as a permanent installation once these wells are permitted. Now, we do need several permits. We need to submit an emergency request to DEP for a public water supply permit to allow us to use these wells. We need an emergency certificate from SRBC to allow us to use these wells. We need railroad approval, PennDOT approval, Wayne Township approval, and a few more property issues that we need to work out with a few property owners to lay this across their property. But like I said, everybody's been fairly cooperative to this point. As I mentioned earlier, the wells will run continuously until at which time, the reservoirs are filled back up and we can cease their operation. At that point, all this pipe would be cut back apart. If you're familiar with HDPE pipe, it can easily be cut back apart and stored, and then later be buried into the ground as part of the permanent project. We were originally going to run a line up McKinney Road, but every time we cross the driveway, we'd have to dig under that driveway. You can't drive over a 16-inch pipe. So Steve Matz was gracious enough to give us permission to go up through his property. And also, if we went up McKinney Road, we'd have to turn and come down Youngdale Road, which again, there's numerous driveways to cross. And PennDOT issues. So I think the alignment we have is the best one, the easiest one, the cheapest one, the most direct one. I did bring a map with me if anybody wants to look at it. If you have any interest in it, I can show you what we're proposing. We have a pretty good plan in place, but it's gonna take time. The pipe's 3 weeks out, the well pumps are 3 weeks out, the VFDs for the pumps are 3 to 4 weeks out. So if we started today, ordering everything, we're not gonna have everything out there for at least a month. Assuming 2 to 3 weeks to put everything together, we're a month and a half to pushing 2 months to get everything up and going. So it's always the issue, you gamble and hope it rains. Like Mark said earlier, if you wait too long, we're not gonna get it in place before rationing would have to start. So, a lot has come together in the last week. Obviously, it's a good opportunity to talk to Suburban and the Filtration Authority. They've been through this before as well. So any comments or, suggestions are greatly appreciated. Again, it's very preliminary, but if the overall, if you guys decide to move forward with this, then, we'd have to get serious and start ordering pipe and pumps and so forth.
I do think it's appropriate to talk about costs and funding. As I said, the proximate cause of the need for this emergency connection is as a result of the project because of the fact that we had to lower the pool, be able to have the contractor work in the dry. The fact that it didn't recover because of climatic conditions is another factor. However, the project, which is funded by a Penvest loan, does have some bearing on how all this is going to get paid for. So I had discussions with the Penvest project specialist who is involved in the current project, which is approximately $5.2 million for a 20-year, 1 3/4% average loan or interest rate over that time. And I said, would Penvest consider paying for this ultimately through a supplemental loan for the project? And the individual stated, if you submitted a letter of no prejudice, which is basically an outline of the reasons why you have the need for additional money, some detail on some of the costs, that at their next meeting, and I believe it would be in late January, the Penvest board would consider the additional funding request for approval. So it's possible that most of the permanent piping and pumps and perhaps the resulting PP&O charge for 3-phase power to the site, any consulting fees, hydrogeologist fees, that would be paid for. We capitalize it then over the next 20 years, and that would be part of the payback. So that letter has to be sent to them by November 1st. So you do have a path forward here, I think, on funding. I know there's going to have to be money paid out by the city in the interim. And I believe you have some mechanisms there with some of the borrowed money that you took down for, I believe it's 2021 bond series. So looks as though you do have a sources and uses of funds here that are pretty well spelled out. Basically, that's the game plan. However, we can't wait too long here because we're getting into the holidays, hunting season. A lot of these people are willing to, we solicited quotes and so forth, and really got into this pretty in detail with suppliers, and then they can do this. But when it gets cold, and especially toward the end of the year, it can be a problem. So we do have to get moving on this, like tomorrow. That we'll start some of these things. So there is a time factor here in order to proceed, make sure we have supplemental source on board, take the pressure off the water plant, and try to get these wells online and bring our supplies up to normal. So all we have is
Thank you. Now, presentation we made, does anyone have questions for them on any parts of the plan or suggestions of how?
Yeah.
What? Yes, Rich?
I think suburban and filtration authority have suggestions for them, but I don't know if you want to put everybody through all that.
Well,
The hope was to be able to sit down with them and talk. And we learned a lot in 2007. We did get funding for that.
right,
So we learned a lot of things too on how to do it. One of the things is who's your contractor going to be, and what's his time frame? Because what we found out, we actually had contractors supplying installed pipe, and it was a heat fusing process. We found out with the equipment that was available, we wouldn't have gotten done in time. I was harder to help with that. And in addition, because of the infrared crews helping move pipe around, we put it in technical. It takes time to do all of this.
Well, actually, okay, yeah, so we made a lot of calls last week and Harger, it's local, they have a fusion machine that allows them to deep fuse 16-inch HDPE pipe together. And they were supposed to start a large project that got delayed because of equipment. So they're available to jump on it. Now, they had obviously fuse all the pipe together, do the boring under McKinney Road and under Youngdale Road. They have the equipment and the manpower to do it. We requested quotes from them. And also Steve Matz, who's the property owner, we contracted with him to do all the road work and site preparation, pad preparation for all the well drilling that we did. He did a lot of the ENS controls and the silt bag. When we ran the 72-hour Oxford pump test, he installed all the temporary piping for that. We would utilize him as well. We've requested quotes from him to assist with Harger. So between Harger and Steve Matz, I think that would be the best team to get it done as quickly as possible. They both said that they don't see any problem. Just, get the materials here and they can get it done. So I think we have a good team assembled. If, the city and you folks, give the green light, sooner the better, obviously, but that would be the team we would use.
My concern with is that even with more than one using it,
Right.
we're talking about not having pipe. And you can start using this space. Like more quickly than that.
Right, well, of the 8,000 feet of pipe we need, 3,000 of that's 12-inch from the Quaker Hill well to the Maxwell. That pipe's sitting in Binghamton right now to Warren, Maine. So Harger would go get it. The day I tell him it's a go, they're gonna start bringing it back and start fusing it together. And then as the plant, the HDPE plant in Alabama would stop run of another job because of this emergency situation and produce 5,000 feet of the 16-inch pipe. And as they develop it, it would be shipped here. So it's going to be 3 to 4 weeks to get all the pipe, but hopefully by the time we get the last truckload, we're done with it. So it's not going to be, we're going to sit around and wait for 3 or 4 weeks till the pipe's all here. It would be fusing it and installing it as we go.
and I appreciate where you're coming from about all of this being here, but we're gonna need to authorize taking action, so I think it's probably good for us to listen in on whatever, so we can make a decision. Other questions, and
Did you guys, Rich, when you had to cross the railroad as well? No, what happened there? I know it's 2007, but
We went under the bridge. We went under.
did you get permission?
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah.
But we didn't bore anything underneath.
Yeah,
it
we're not
might be
gonna,
your,
we're
it
not gonna,
might be your most difficult to view.
yeah, we're not gonna bore it as well. There's a 2x3 culvert, dry culvert that goes under the railroad on the Matt's property. That we can easily pull the pipe through there, 70 feet across, but we need permission. So, and then the one thing about PP&L, they looked at bringing 3-phase power to this job in the next few weeks, which we haven't got a cost from them yet. But just so you know, to rent 125 kW generator is about $5,000 to $6,000 a month. We need 2 of them.
So that's 12,000 a month, and they use 7 gallons of diesel fuel an hour. Which is $20,000 a month per generator, so there's $50,000 a month in renting generators. And fueling them 24/7. So if this lasts a month, you're gonna spend $56,000, 2 months double that, 3 months triple that. We have to go all the way to the spring, you can start to see how that cost increases. So we jumped on calling PPNL as soon as we could, and as of this morning, they said that they have a problem running 3-phase power over the railroad because of the permitting that the railroad is requiring. So they're talking about coming from Old Bridge Road down past the Maxwell would be cheaper and easier for them, and then they wouldn't need railroad crossing. So we're looking at that as well.
Would this be a permanent run or is
It
it
is to be permanent. Yeah, and I'm not, I did a quick calculation, but, we don't have to get, the sooner we get 3-phase power in, I think I estimated it'd be 10,000 a month to run both wells electricity wise. So for the 60, it's gonna be 10,000 a month. So even if we can't get it in to start, the sooner we can get that 3-phase power in, the better in terms of saving no cost.
We spent $1,000 on fuel.
Yeah. Yeah, I was assuming, I used $3.50 a gallon for off-road diesel, in that quantity, and I came up with $30 a day. So, yeah, these are estimates, again, they're trying to.
And we also had reached out to the various agencies to get approval. We talked to the Safe Drinking Water Program Manager, Williamsport, and it sounds like DEP is on board. They want an application which we're working on right now. I think we'll get a quick turnaround and approval on that. SRBC, we're going to let Jim Castleberry, who is the consulting hydrogeologist for the wells, handle that. And I believe he's working on some things right now, Jim, in terms of what we need to do there with SRBC. So
Yeah, the SRBC it's not an emergency permit, it's an emergency certificate. The 2-page form that looks fairly benign, but it's not. You send it in, they come back with, a long letter with a million things they want. So we've told Jim Castleberry that, you need to start analyzing all the pump test data so that we can answer those questions once we get them. So again, the decision is to move forward. We'll file that 2-page certificate, emergency certificate with SRBC. Hopefully, within a couple of days, they'll come back with what they want, and then Jim Castleberry is gonna have to jump and get all that data together. Again, data that he puts together, he still has to do the permanent installation as well. So a lot of what's being done is gonna be reused. The pipe, the pumps, the adapters, the drop pipe, the electrical service. Of course, the temporary buildings, we could reuse the chemical feed pumps and the chlorine analyzers, but there is gonna be some costs of laying this line and boring into the roads that, may not be able to be used, but I would say a good 60% of it's gonna be reused in the future when these wells become permanent parts of the system. Yeah.
This is part of my question. You anticipate the well field,
Yes.
but I wanted to put the pipe in the ground now permanently, and you're done with it.
Well, the
Plus, because if you do kill it, you're gonna need another 1.5 million gallons of water.
so
Why do this all over in 2 years?
it will take too long. If we don't do it on an emergency permit, just a permitting alone can take 6 months. To get all the right of ways necessary to cross all those properties. It's just not gonna happen in a month and a half, like we need it to happen. I would love to put it in the ground and be done with it, but that route is a lot longer than the route we're taking across Steve Matt's property. And, he's not gonna want a 16-inch line buried right up through the middle of his property permanently. To do it permanently, we're not gonna be allowed to cross McElhatton Creek. DEP, or, the wetlands people, wetlands and waterways people from DEP Williamsport, they're gonna give us an emergency permit, put a steel casing pipe across McElhatton Run and run this HDPE pipe through it. When we come out of the culvert at the railroad, none of that would be permittable under a permanent installation.
You can't bore underground.
We could, but it requires a 105 permit from DEP, and that could take up to 6 months to get. The only way we can do this, and when I say a month and a half, it scares me, but the only way we can do this in a month and a half is through emergency permits and temporary installation. Now, will the Youngdale crossing and the McKinney Road crossing be used? Hopefully, that boring will be used. We'll obviously look at that with permanent installation. So we didn't waste the $25,000 boring, but we don't have the time to do it on a permanent basis, especially with all the right of ways that are needed to install that line. We'd like to do that. It's not feasible to do it in a month and a half. We're probably looking at 6 to 9 months at a minimum.
Well, you know, I guess you need to be starting on that right now because you're gonna need this one when you tell her open.
Right, yep,
We're going.
that's right.
So we have to get started. You can do two things at once.
Right.
You know, what's longer than one and a half. You gotta get it done. What's wrong with starting it now? We're gonna wait till the last minute.
Other things?
Okay.
Yeah.
Right now, you're planning on taking the well water directly to the line. To the plant. And you say when it's permanent, you're gonna completely reroute and bring it to the plant, or are you gonna leave it in? Or are we just gonna figure out a route, bury it and pass it in down
I
there?
haven't gotten there, I haven't decided that yet. I mean, a lot has to happen before we have enough information to make an educated decision about that. The new source sampling from the wells, the SRBT DEP review of all the data that Jim Casper submits. If they come back and say it's goody, groundwater under the direct influence, we have to come to you.
Right.
And then I think the plan that we laid out to do that a year ago was probably the best way to get to it.
Right.
Not the way we're going now.
I know, and that's why I'm asking, now that if it comes back good, then we have to reevaluate whether we're gonna take it to the
If
plant.
it comes back as true groundwater and we don't need to filter it, then we're gonna be building a permanent chlorination building down in that. And then a permanent connection to that, the system somewhere. Is it gonna be where we're going now? May or may not, we just don't know. I mean, I like where it's going now because it's going into a 16 line low velocity, and at night, when it use water, the water can be flooded or reverse direction at low velocity. So you know what happens when you reverse the flow of water in pipeline. So I think it's a good point, good location. We don't have to bore under 220 at that location. So it makes sense to connect there, but a lot has to happen before we decide what the future is gonna look like. Again, the classification of those wells is paramount. Or there was a comment made earlier about the operation of it. So someone needs to check the chemicals every day, make sure there's enough chemical there. Someone needs to check the chlorine residual, although we're gonna have a cellular modem that's gonna send out signals, your plant, you, to the city, whoever wants to be on the phone list.
Well,
And you can look at that chlorine residual, 24/7.
well, I wanna.
Yeah.
Talk to you about that. With a cellular plant, we can put it on gated,
Exactly.
we have the dialers.
And there'd be low alarms, low chlorine alarms, high chlorine alarms, so if there was a problem, pumps were overfeeding or underfeeding, we'd know to go out and make it. But fortunately, DEP said we didn't have to fluoridate that water, which is key, because one fluoride is a nightmare, and to do it in a small building temporarily, it corrodes everything, and we have to get a separate building for it, so we lobbied for that, and they agreed that we would just have to feed chlorine and corrosion inhibitor to match the water you're leaving now.
So you have the rest of the water have to be not fluoridated either.
Right. You'll be happy about it. Okay,
The rest of the city may not be. That can be made. Will so you're gonna end up with blended water, which is well water and treated water. Depending on demand and how much water
blend is gonna vary.
Yeah.
What is that with respect to testing requirements?
We submit the emergency permit request to DEP Public Works Provider, and it's basically a full-blown Public Works Provider permit. The only difference makes an emergency, they review it in a hurry, they put it on top of the file, to the bottom of the file. That request, that permit approval, emergency permit approval is gonna state what that testing is. I'm sure, there's gonna be requirements for the new wells. We're gonna have to do routine testing for it. I don't think it's gonna affect distribution testing. I don't think any of that's gonna change, cold form testing in the system, but point of entry is. So till we get the permit from DEP, we won't know, but, there's a lot less testing for true groundwater sources than surface water. It's a fraction of what Lenny have to do because of the reservoir source. Surface water has about 10 times more testing than the groundwater does. So, hopefully it's palatable.
And my understanding though is if you're
Blending,
blending
Yeah.
changes, then you gotta look at basically different scenarios.
and, a lot of people are concerned about, well, you're putting this line over the ground most of the way, isn't gonna freeze. So for one, we're not gonna shut it down, and two, it's 52-degree groundwater all year round. So, there may be some issues we'll have to overcome. In the winter, he's gonna be putting out water and it's pretty cold. When the reservoir's frozen over and it's, 32 degrees coming into his plant, it might warm up a little bit. It's putting water out in the mid-30s or so.
Yeah.
We're gonna be pumping 52-degree water in that and blending with it. So if someone lives, the first customer on that 16-inch line, during the day, they might say, oh, this water is really cold, and then all of a sudden it's warmer. And then at night, we're gonna be putting that water, and at night, it's gonna be good, it's gonna be blending in the tank, and you'll get an average temperature, but there may be times where customers might say the water's a lot warmer than in the winter than we thought, but chemically wise, it won't hurt it.
On at the point where it's fine.
Yeah, we need 2,000 feet of 16-inch line to meet the 4 log virus removal and this 20-minute CT. So we could do that up on the other side, 1,000 feet on the other side of the railroad crossing, but we're in the middle of no man's land. So we got to get to Youngdale Road. We need to put a building there with a point analyzer. And there's a lot of details. We can't use a typical like Hawk 1720 or Seal 17 that has reagents, because the water that comes out of that can't dump on the ground because there's reagents. So we're seeking approval of a continuous flow amperometric chlorine analyzer that you don't add reagents to, so it's just the water coming out. We have to dechlorinate, we build, I can't get into with green, but so there's a lot of that detail we have to work out.
But it's a residual drop there below what it's supposed to be, will let it somehow automatically comes down or does it?
That's somebody. And what we were gonna do is, because we're feeding chlorine down at the Maxwell, we were gonna go out 100, 200 feet, put a saddle on that and bring a 3/4 inch line back in and put a chlorine analyzer there. So we know the chlorine going up there is 1.5. This groundwater has very little oxidant demand. It's not like surface water like the river. To get a 1.5 chlorine residual, you might have to feed 3 milligrams per liter to the river, whereas the groundwater, you feed 1.5, you get 1.5. So we're going to monitor it down below, so we don't have a problem up at the 60-inch where it's in.
One of the things we found out in 2007 was that the chemical disturbances have regulations they have to comply with, both at the regulatory level with the government.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked to them about, there's different chemical suppliers, Univar local, and that's really what your plant uses. Lenny's plant, but we need chlorine corrosion inhibitor. We don't have the day tank that we have in that building is going to be on a containment pallet, so that's a requirement of DEP. But normally you have to have containment for all your drum storage or your tote storage. We're not going to have the ability to do that.
But that's not what
Oh, okay.
I'm talking. Chemical producers that are not super. They,
Oh.
They're,
No, we have to know.
The only thing, I mean, it's definitely gonna change. So they need to know, I'm sorry.
Question for council. A lot of contractors could be locally for things like electrical contractor, fencing, generators, things like that. And a local leader will be paying. Not that I don't want part of it, pay for it. But that's less expensive to you.
No, we, obviously with Parker and Steve Matz doing the majority of the work. We need an electrical contractor to run underground 110 into these buildings to run the chemical feed equipment so that's gonna be all local. Goal is to get everybody local. Now, the generators, we contacted all the generator suppliers in the area. And they will be coming from, if the company's local, their office is local, they don't have the 125 kW generators local, so they, like United Rental, come from Pittsburgh.
You have to have a generator, small generator at the point where connecting.
We're hoping to have power drop there on the existing line.
What kind of laundering are you gonna have on the well pump? Like a site or?
Well, we'll have B&W low level cutoffs on them. So we won't, if the level drop for some reason, it'll shut off to protect the pump.
I think it's worth mentioning though, when they ran the 72-hour pump test, they had very little drawdown on that well. I think it was less than 10 feet.
It's 4 feet.
So
They're probably
There's a lot of
capable
water
of
there.
more than 500 gallons a minute, but we gotta start somewhere. But yeah, we'll have controls on the pumps, we'll have VFDs, soft start them. The VFDs are 3 to 4 weeks out, so modern pump, who's given us the best quote, pump. Eichelberger's modern pump, the Cole Brothers were all about the same. Modern pump has VFDs, 250 horsepower VFDs on trailer. So there's $3,000 a trailer a month. So for the first month, we may have to incur a rental cost until those VFDs come in and can be put in.
Any possibility to.
Yeah, we'll have check valves, to prevent that from happening, pump itself having check valves, so. We'll be putting air releases on every high spot on the 16-inch line. We're gonna put a blow off on each well where it comes out of the ground. So we can blow it off, and then that'll also allow us to drain that line back if we have to, if there's something wrong with the chlorine residual, we can drain it back through those 2 blow offs, so. We're trying to minimize fittings, because fittings are expensive and they're hard to get. So we've laid it out in a way where we can bend the pipe, this HDPE is very flexible compared to like ductile iron. So if you look at the drawing, you'll see some big sweeping radiuses. That's purposeful to eliminate the need by 16-inch fittings. Same thing up at the 16-inch tie-in, to cut a 16 by 16 by 16 T in on a live line that could have hot taps over $50,000 to do that job. So there's an 8-inch coming off now that runs down the Youngdale Road. We'll put an 8 by 8 by 8 T, and we'll put the 16 into that. We'll reduce down to that 8, go straight into the 16. That way the 8 will come off that line. So we have, and flow right into the 16 line.
I think also it would behoove, everyone's, it would facilitate the minimizing of this pumping system by getting some flow reduction. Now, you don't have to ration water to get, people to use less water. Right now, typically, we don't run 3 million gallons a day. I mean, usually we're around 2.5. So, I mean, we gotta get down to 2.5 and under. And, I could save weeks of, running these pumps and generators and so forth.
What's causing the 500,000 gallon difference?
Well, I think, I don't know about industrial production, but, there was we made contacts, right, with the industries. I know a couple of them heavy demand periods, but also leaks in the system. I mean, is the city, you know, we had usually contracted with a leak detection contractor. Has that been done, do you know?
Yeah, they've been contacting.
Okay.
Just gotta get this timeline.
But, you know, we gotta get the usage now.
So, we monitor the flows every day at the plant. We like your people have all kinds of hats and they're looking at different things. But we're looking at the water every day. So we see some things. On July 31st, the main from the plant to the city broke. For the entire year up until that day, the average usage was 2.7 million gallons. Ever since that day, it's been over 3 million, with the exception of the last 3 days, it was 2.9 and change, so basically 3 million gallons. It's my assumption that something or many things broke that day. Because it's been or above 3 million since that day. The city has been trying to find it, but there's something going on in that system that day.
Well, I think it's where he has to go. Back to have it on that line. If we have historically had problems. You know, with the mains coming in.
It's getting back to Todd. It will be great if, at least, you know, from my perspective, would be great if Penvest can include that. Obviously, the city doesn't have to be the party to do the interim financing, so to speak. The filtration authority or Suburban can pay the costs for hardware, things like that, and get reimbursed from Penvest. City does have its 2021A. We have a little more than $1 million of that hasn't spent yet, that would be available to use for this project after discussion with our bond council. So that could be used as the interim financing and then reimbursed with Penvest money. But it does have to all eventually be reimbursed to 2021A, which is why Penvest would be also.
Yeah, well, they may stipulate that. You know, who's paying the bill, and we, probably the city would be the best.
We just touched back on one thing with the reduction of use. of Something water. Does the city know what you should typically be using in a daily amount? 'Cause the time I got the email from Lenny back in August, I looked back through our records over the past couple of years. And our daily average withdrawal, or daily average flow through our system has been right around 1.1 million a day. And that hasn't changed. I mean, it's actually down slightly from what it was in 2021 to 2022.
I think, one thing that kind of throws that off for us is food quality. Seems to draw an additional 300,000, which some days they do, some days they don't. And we don't know what they actually did draw until a quarter after they've used it, because we don't read until after you use water. So that is a major consumer for us. I would say the rest of ours are probably pretty standard, which we know how much we bill in a quarter for gallons compared to what they consume.
Which is your daily, you know what your,
Off the top of my head, I
I don't know, daily or something.
I think it ran around 1.4, 1.45. Guessing. Million gallons of the era. Meter consumption, right?
yeah, meters.
So what about, yeah, about 1.4. That doesn't account for leaks either. Anyway,
You're saying 1.4, you mean metered consumption that customers are being billed, or just
No, that's the difference between the bourbon and the Planto. We use about 2.5 total. You use 1.1, which is correct. Usually we're around 1.4 on average. This was before first quality, came on. So, yeah, I mean, it has ups and downs. That's generally 2.5. Correct.
2.5, yeah.
2.5.
Yeah. It's been between 2.5 and 2.8. But
We've been running like 3.2.
every day since July 31st.
Yeah.
So
The immediate concern would be what's causing that. If it's that far out of whack with what your consumption should be, maybe take it for quality. into account.
Yeah, I think that's,
There, 300,000 or 400,000 gallons a day going.
yeah, that's what I think it's gonna happen here with police protection people, because a lot of these mains, that's 5 miles of pipeline through, undeveloped areas, and,
And our guys do listen to leaks and find leaks and repair leaks. We had that being repaired simultaneously not too long ago. So we definitely find them, and fix them on a regular basis. It would be hard for anyone to believe that there is a 500,000 gallon a day leak that has gone undetected since July 31st. So it likely is a bunch of things. But we do leak detection and leak repair on a regular basis, almost, I dare say, daily.
It's great about 3 years ago.
Yes.
We shared that one. Company came in and do the leak detection work in Yesney and Wayne Township. You cut your usage down by 400 to 500,000 gallons a day. Now it's disappeared.
Right,
So,
and we had that.
leaks are back to life. It's just happened. Leak after leak after leak. You gotta fix it. You can't let them go. Months and years.
We don't know of a single leak that is not being addressed, not one. We have no leaks that are just known and not repaired. That does not happen. Bonkovich didn't complete the city because of an accident and all of his equipment was destroyed. Now that he is available again, he's coming back again. We agree.
it was brought up about, coordination. Who's gonna do that, and is somebody have to be certified or licensed for that? Who do we have? What's the plan for that?
There is no plan for that today. There will be a plan by the time it's all put in place, but.
Lenny said he doesn't have anything to do, so I think you.
Oh, right.
Well, one of the reasons I brought it up, and here now, if we're talking about, are we expecting him to be a part of that solution, or is there another path we're looking at?
Well, anything dealing with personnel between the agencies is something we have to discuss. Likely through the board of those different agencies, but I don't think we have a staffing plan in place today. We just have the knowledge that that needs to be taken care of.
Okay.
And that requires a filtration line. And talking to your, not a filtration line, sorry, a chemical addition license. When you're talking to your staff, I don't believe anybody in the city has that license at all. So the only people in the organization, greater organization, when you combine the three of them, would be the filtration plant. That would have license to take care of.
The other issue there is blending water. The filtration authority permitted entity. Mix another entity in there that's gonna be responsible for that water. And it is banned, that everybody's gonna say, it's not my problem.
I can give you now it's 25 years ago. The Bourbons before they hooked on Ferrisville and Mackeyville, and this is part of the Lamar Township. There's a couple houses that are producing 1.5, 1.6 million gallons a day. Now we're down to 1.087 MTD, a little over a million gallons. And in the month of August, we had 2 days where we're at 900 something. So but we've worked for 25 years to tighten up the system. And it can be done, but it just, it has to be addressed. There's a lot of water going somewhere. When it is done, the thing that and you have two on sure break that, like space the verb, I wish both of them were 1 million. Right now, the city's about 2 MPD, and the verb is a little over 1 MPD, and that adds up to over 3, so there's a lot of water going somewhere.
Well,
If you're not getting paid for it, or it's running in the.
well, that will be addressed, we are finishing a hydraulic study and a plan program for water system improvements by the city. But I can tell you, based on the research we've done, that this is an old system compared to suburban. And when I say that, I mean lines that were put in the 1880s, early 1900s up through the 20s.
Mark, I remember.
So that's,
that thing 30 years ago. I won't name.
well,
Basically, said Bourbon was no worn out system. Well, I guess it's not the worn out.
well, I'm just telling you what I know. You're working with a system, the majority of lines are 100 to 130 years old. With cast iron pipe that get points. So, that's something that, the city will have to address in terms of, in the future, in terms of the gradual replacement of the lines. But
Gregory, like.
I mean, there's-
Big term.
that it's, a very, it's gonna be a sizable financial commitment.
Anything else?
But, Mark, would you clarify your statement that we have to reduce by 500,000 a day somewhere? Is it from the 2.5 or is it down from 3?
It's gonna have to be, currently it's running around 380.
So we want to drop 500,000.
Yes.
From that, so we're in phase 2 and moving to phase 3, or in phase 3. Has everybody notified their customers and their industries? Suburban, have you notified all your people to reduce 20%? Will phase 3 make that go more than 20?
That's,
I don't know,
Mark can speak to that, but that's mandatory.
but if we're moving into that, is this a good forum now to educate the public to reduce even more? And give them some of those details that we may.
Yeah, there is, under stage 3, there is a listing of proposed water reduction measures by customers. And that's specified 20% mandatory reduction. So that's where we really are now, and I think I gave that information to you, Greg, that you posted on the
It's in the letter and the city's website.
So there's been a notification made that I guess the letter to go out.
Yes, they were all distributed last Thursday, right, to city customers.
But that, you have an approved drought contingency plan with the state, and that's right out of the plan. That's basically the template.
That's on the city water emergency page. We have a 2023 water emergency webpage. And the drought contingency plan is on there so that people can look that up and see in stage 3, what are the further reductions that will have to take place.
Good. I want to take advantage of the situation with the media to express that to all the customers that we try to serve, because we don't want to run out of water. So we have to make sure that we do the right things here.
Anything else? Anyone else? Want to contribute?
You had to drop the, whole 5 feet, do the work, but what is it actually now? 15
feet of yeah, elevate 1650. Which is 15 feet. And currently we have 172 million gallons in oil reservoir. And the maximum capacity when it's full is 558 million. So we got about 380 million gallons to go.
How much is it whole?
The total capacity,
No. I know what,
172 million gallons.
so it's only 134.
Right.
It's all coming up, go.
Well,
It's very slow, because everything gets 3 square miles a year.
Oh, you still have 40,000.
Yeah, it's come up since the first of the month by 18 million gallons, which is not a lot, but it's not nothing. So,
Really one year away.
yeah.
Anything else, anybody else have any input on this? So we all agree that we need to take an emergency step here, correct? I'm asking, you know, the other attendees, do you agree we have to take the steps that we're taking?
Well, yeah, we're talking about that last week.
I just want to make sure, because that's what was the purpose of the meeting, was to get consensus from all the agencies that, yes, we need to move forward on this. And
Yeah.
the filtration authority agrees that we need to take the step.
Well, they got the same basic board as.
Well, I'm just, again, I want to make clear, because I mean, that was the purpose of putting this all together, was to try to get consensus on which direction, or the direction we were taking.
On the fact that the city and Spur were.
Sure.
But we'll never have any conversation. It's.
Okay, so, we'll move on then. 4B is the authorization to implement the emergency water supply. I will motion council to do that.
I do. Because of the good information from Gwen Dobson and our engineering firm, and I think they answered most of the questions, even some of the technical ones. And I didn't hear anything to keep us from proceeding to move on. So I think we need to move forward, therefore I will make a motion to authorize and implement the emergency water supply.
And second. Any other discussion? I think that this was a productive meeting and we need to, going forward, do a little more of this on some of these decisions, we involve everyone here to get together and make sure we're all kind of paddling in the same direction with the water journey. Call for the vote.
At this point, you're planning on using the Series A.
the 2021A. Yeah.
And then you'll.
That'll get reimbursed through kind of that.
That's to reimburse.
The 2021A, yeah.
That clear?
If the motion could be amended to authorize the submission of a letter of no prejudice, letter to Penvest requesting these additional funds.
Included in the motion.
Yeah.
I so
Okay. So we have the amended motion. No other discussion. Call for the vote.
Councilmember Conklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Missouri.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson.
yes.
Councilmember Brinker.
Yes.
Councilmember Morris.
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. Thank you for your help on this. Next on the agenda is a discussion regarding future joint municipal authority.
That was actually the original purpose of today's meeting. But water emergency got a priority seat at the table. But it was requested by Suburban that the city sit down and have a discussion about combining the system somehow into a joint municipal authority.
Do we have to do that today, or would you rather have a meeting? Instead of meeting date, have an actual meeting?
Well, I'd like
Instead
to
of this
have
forum,
set up an additional meeting, but I mean, just get some
just to get the ball rolling and some things for everybody to start thinking about in the interim. I mean, I'd like to,
Yeah, there's a lot of people here that aren't involved in that too, so.
Well, the city has a committee, correct, and Suburban has a committee. So, set up a meeting with the committee.
I'll email Greg, start an email and we'll get some data together from everyone and come together for the subcommittees to have that discussion.
But if Greg has something he'd like to say today, I think he should be allowed to say.
I mean, just things to think about between now and when we actually have the meeting. If you're gonna have a joint authority, is it going to be a standalone joint authority? It's gonna encompass all the infrastructure. I mean, from the people that I've talked to at DEP over the 15 years that I've been with Suburban, they never understood why there's three separate entities to start with, why there's the City of Lock Haven, why there's Suburban Water, and then why in the middle filtration. Beginning, they thought it, I mean, all along, they questioned why it's not
Well,
one
I'll
entity.
answer that, Greg, because at the time that we needed filtration in place, we got everybody together and talked about it, and it wasn't feasible to put everything in. And we actually talked about looking at things and then the county, because if you look at them, they're contiguous, because Pine Creek to we ended up deciding that what we had to comply with, we could only look at where the city of Suburban, but it wasn't feasible to define those systems because of manpower, because of funding and politics. And that's the reason they're separate entities. The other thing is that discussion that you can have is whether the city and Suburban feel that it's logical to look at planning the system, but things like we talked about really should be discussed by municipal entities that are going to create the authority. Because once they're the ones that are going to have to decide what kind of authority they want to be, how many members it should have, and how the water traffic. The Suburban don't represent the municipality, they're appointed by the municipality, but they can't really speak for the supervisor or county. Based on the city representative. And I think that the committees should get together and decide if it's logical approach. Yeah. And then go back and have somebody either approach all of municipal entities or get them all in the same room. With the filtration, get everybody in. And they decided what they wanted to do, and they hired the firm hired.
We've actually, this will be the third time that we sit down to discuss it. And it always came up the roadblock. PUC. Union members, non-union members. That, you know, it was always seemed to be something that finally ended up just saying, you know, well, we'll try again next time.
Did you say DEP?
The
They want to post about that.
If you had combined with the one question I had in my mind was I don't know that I fully understand the Lock Haven City Authority. Who owns what and the water, I mean, I know the water supply belongs to the city of Lock Haven. But would that be included in that merger of entities, that the new? Whatever.
Well, the city authority would be part of the conversation with the city and Suburban.
Yeah. But would this fourth of water be included in?
I think that's part of the discussion. I mean, you know, as been said, it's been talked about before. This is the first time when they first did it, and then I think back, Rich, you remember better, but I was on council, we started talking about it one other time. We just could never find that place where everybody was comfortable to make the move.
Right.
And perhaps now we will, but hasn't happened yet.
But it will take time, so.
Yep.
We need to start.
You have to start somewhere. Is that everything you want to bring up for now? Okay, so, Greg, you'll work to schedule a meeting for our committee with them. All right. So. Then take your last, and that's, I think, a date for a future meeting, or we want to have a future meeting on this, or are we gonna call them when necessary? How are we gonna do that?
It might be a good idea if we're to have another meeting, that everybody's on the same page about the time we ready to start this.
And are we prepared to set a date for that?
They don't have their schedules, but if you guys could put a couple dates around. In about a month.
Question now. It's with the vote and everything now. We're gonna order pipe and all that.
Yep.
Get it started. Or if you need anything from suburban.
Okay. Anything else anybody wants to bring before council? Do I have a motion to adjourn? We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.